Chom Rip Suo. I'm the Moonlit Page Turner. Grab your treat, grab your tea, and let's talk books. For this month's reads, we are traveling to Cambodia. And I did know a little bit about Cambodian's history before I dove into these books. You don't need to know about it because they're pretty explicit about what's happening. Both the nonfiction and fiction stories that I read have to do with the same time period and the same events. And this has to do with the takeover by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge in the 70s, where it's estimated that 1.2 million Cambodians were killed by their own people, by starvation. They were in work camps, as well as just being straight out murdered. This will probably be the last time, or hopefully the last time, that I choose two books about the same time period, because this month and last month wrecked me emotionally. These are not easy reads. They were both pretty good books, but please take care while reading, because this one definitely had me sobbing. For those of you that don't know, Cambodia is in Southeast Asia. It borders 3 other countries. So we have Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. Thailand and Cambodia are currently in conflict, and they've had a history of conflict in the past. They actually used to be part of the same kingdom and then separated. We've known that people have lived in the area of Cambodia for about 40,000 years. So it's had a long time to go through multiple conflicts, just like all the other places that have human life in it for thousands of years. We've seen a lot of different types of government come in and different influences. You definitely see influences from India and China. That'll become important in some of the books that I've read, as well as they established their own kingdom and had a really strong kingdom in Angkor. Most people have heard of Angkor Wat in the 8th century, and that went to about the 16th century. Then they actually had to ask for help from the French in the 1800s, so about 1860 to about 1950, I think it was 1953, they gained their independence again. So they started out as a protectorate where France was just kind of helping them against Thailand. And then France took over. And so that is also partly of what happens with Pol Pot and the influence, because anytime you break away and become an independent country, you have, as we saw in like Algeria and basically most countries that we've talked about gaining their independence, they turn their back on what was in the past and they try to start anew. And in this case, we have the murdering of like 1.2 million people. So long history, beautiful culture. We do, in the United States, we do learn about Cambodia, mostly tied with the Vietnam War, because of what was happening in the Vietnam War pushes Cambodia to be, one, anti-American, and to have the influence of communism and things like that. So I did know a little bit about going in, which was helpful, but again, you don't need to. Before we get into this month's reads, let's get into this month's treat. Now, this video is coming a little later than I normally post it because I had an epic fail in the treat division. I really wanted to make Cambodian donuts because I love the fact that the pink donut box that is so iconic here in the United States comes from a Cambodian immigrant who fled Cambodia in the 70s and was trying to establish themselves in Southern California, and then was given these pink boxes, and they have become iconic. So I tried, I failed. So I tried again, and this time I have steamed rice cakes. Now the recipe that I have, I think they called these Bann Bo Hap, which I believe is Vietnamese. We have shared culture all around Asia and other countries as well. But so these are in Cambodia as well as parts of Vietnam. And what they are, you can see kind of, they're like, they're not spongy, but they like have a jello consistency. These are vegan and gluten-free. What is in it is tapioca starch, rice, flour, sugar, coconut milk, and there is yeast in here as well. And so you mix all that together and then you steam the cakes and they become this like jello consistency, but a little bit firmer than that. If you're not a fan of jello, you may not like these because of the consistencies. They're not super sweet. There is a couple recipes that I saw online. I put sesame seeds on mine, but there are coconut toppings that I've seen other people put. So let's dive in. That's some weird ASMR stuff. I'm so sorry. But you can taste kind of the, like, it's got that rice, like, flavor to it, but it's like when I've made coconut rice in the past, which is so delicious. But in little, like, snack form. And you can put these in the refrigerator. They last up to, like, week and a half. And they're really easy to kind of take with you. They're not super sweet, but they're pretty good. The first book I'm going to talk about is In the Shadow of the Banyan, and this is by Vaddey Ratner. And both of these books are written originally in English because both of these women will flee Cambodia and come over to the United States. In the Shadow of the Banyan is historical fiction, but it is really a fictionalized version of her life. She does change some things. She is not the main character, but her and the main character share a lot of similarities, which there is an interview with the author in the back. I originally gave this 4 stars. It is emotionally damaging, and I bawled like a baby. It is beautifully written. There was one thing that I had with this book why I dropped it down from 5 to 4, and I will talk about that when I get there. But reading more about her life made that choice that she made make sense. So I would probably give it 4.5, but still, if you're going to choose to read this book, please read with care because it is super sad. Our main character in the story starts with our main character. She's 7. Her name is Rami. She had polio as a child. She's still a child in this book, but she had polio when she was younger, and so she does have a limp. She's got one leg that's shorter than the other, and she has a leg brace. That comes into the story a couple of times as being important. Our author also had polio as a child, so that's one of the connections that she has. The author said her family is different than Rami's. Rami lives with her parents and her younger sister, who's a toddler, as well as their grandmother. Their grandmother is when she talks about her, she is referred to as the grandmother queen because her family is royalty. And this will put their lives in danger when the Khmer Rouge come in to Phnom Penh, which is the capital. Both books start in that same location, and they are forced to flee. They come, they knock on the door, they said, you have 5 minutes to get out of here. Part of what they say is why they're doing this is because the Americans are coming because of the Vietnam conflict. Because of what's happening in Vietnam, there's planes, and we've seen planes in Cambodia, and so the Khmer Rouge are saying the Americans are coming to bomb you. You need to get out of the city. That is not actually what's happening. The Khmer Rouge will then take over the city. So they are forced to flee. They end up in a couple different locations. In one of the locations, early on, they're able to connect with his brother, the dad's brother, and his family. And so for a long time, they stay together. They end up in a monastery where they meet this old man who used to sweep the floors, and then he kind of disappears one day. They learn about what happened in that monastery. And so you're looking at the story through the eyes of a 7-year-old. Khmer Rouge, who is the ones that is pushing them from these one spot to the next, they are feeding them, but not always. Luckily, her family was able to stow away some gems and things of importance, which enables them to buy from other people. And so that they're able to not starve, and be as hungry and other. And at the beginning, a lot of people are really friendly. The people that are around them, the Khmer Rouge soldiers are not. They are not friendly at all. There comes one night, though, where they come in and they are looking for people to help the revolution. In particular, people who are educated, who can write, who can read. And her father is a poet, and they're royalty. So the Khmer Rouge are trying to erase the history of Cambodia. They're trying to completely demolish the government system that is there. And so her family kind of stays back because they know that they are potentially in danger. One day they come up to Rami and they ask her, what is your father's name? And they ask her, like, does she know how to read? And she's 7. She's kind of taken off off guard. And so she does identify who her family is, and that puts them in danger, to the point where the soldiers then will come back, and her father decides he needs to leave, and so he goes with the soldiers. This is the part, and this is pretty early in the story. We never see her father again. I thought it was such a, for me, like the whole time I'm like, are we going to hear about him? Are we going to see him? Of course, the mother's devastated. The family is like kind of divided on things. But learning about the author at the back of the book, she also loses her father and never finds out what happens to him. So that connection is there. I was really hoping that, like, eventually towards the end or something, authors note something, we would learn about the father. But it makes more sense to me now that I have read that we don't ever find out what happens to the father. They pretty much think that he was killed by the Khmer Rouge. So that is kind of the first devastation. There is a little baby that passes away right before all this event, so that's kind of her first time really seeing death. She loses the people that she grew up with. Like, she had a wet nurse and a gardener that she called Old Boy, and they're left behind. So she's kind of hoping that they have survived, but most likely they have not. And then she loses her father. Eventually they kind of put two and two together that he has not lived. Them losing the father, though, then separates their family because there is no connection with the other part. They ask the old lady, like, who are your kids? And because it's not her son, it's her daughter-in-law, she doesn't claim them. She's an older lady. And so the mom and the two girls have to leave the monastery, and they're put onto a truck and taken to what will eventually be a work farm, but they stay with this couple who were my favorite in the whole book, May and Poke, who are a elderly couple who are never able to have their own kids, and so they kind of adopt them, and they take such good care of them, except for Ramey's sister will get sick, and Ramey takes a lot of the blame for what happens to her father, and she thinks that her mother hates her because of it, because her mother's just really upset, and like their whole lives have been totally thrown upside down. But so Ramey will come really connected with Poke. They will eventually have to leave those two, and they will go to another, basically they're just working all day long to make rice to help feed the soldiers and not necessarily the people. There's a lot of cruelty that happens in this, and you'll see me start to tear up a little bit. But there's so much compassion from May and Poke that I've read this like a while ago and I'm still tearing up. They were just fantastic. It does end happily, I will tell you that, but the journey along the way is really, really upsetting. And I didn't think I was going to get emotional when talking about this book again, but it's beautifully written. There's a lot of poetry in it because her father was a poet, and you can see all the little tabs I took from it. But I would definitely say take care when reading. If you're a really emotional reader, I may skip this one because I'm not, when I cry, like you can see me starting to tear up. I was like Kim Kardashian ugly cry. Like this was really sad. It does end up happy. I will put that in here, but I won't spoil it for you in case you want to dive in. All right, the nonfiction, so the true story, that is based on that woman's life. Again, she does change some stuff. The story, their family's a little differently, but we basically get a repeat in First They Killed My Father by Loung Ung. She once again left Cambodia and came to the United States, and this is her story of her family being kicked out of Phnom Penh and their struggles and the devastation and the loss of her family. So she is 5, which I will tell you after, because I read this one after the banyan tree, or in the shadow of the banyan. So all of the things that you experience in this book, also you see a little bit in the one before it. So no surprises. This one is still also emotional because of the loss of her family and the things that her family were put through. Awful, terrible. She asks a lot of questions as a 5-year-old, which sometimes puts her family in danger, which was really annoying to me, but I kept having to remind myself she's 5. We do see her life at the very beginning when she talks about what a great life that they had in the city. And her father worked for the government, so they were pretty well off. They had a nice apartment. She goes to breakfast with her parents. She talks about her life with her friends and at school. She does read, which they have to pretend to be peasants, just like in the previous book, because being educated and being part of the upper class is extremely dangerous. So they also pretend to be poor farmers. She's got more sisters and brothers in this book. They have a pretty large family to the point where they will have to separate in order to survive, because we do see some starvation in The Shadow of the Banyan, but it is really spelled out in this one. She's got older siblings that will leave to go to different work camps. First They Killed My Father is an interesting title for this book. I think it's not the right title because her father is not the first in her family to die. Her father is taken one day by soldiers. They're like, hey, we need to talk to him. He'll be back tomorrow. And then they never see him again. Young has experiences that she talks about in the book where she can kind of see what's happening, out-of-body experiences, because she'll see this a couple times with some of her family where she'll get to witness their deaths, although they are not corroborated by other people. So yeah, take that with as you believe it. I don't know if I would want to experience that trauma, but at the same time, knowing and not knowing is part of the issue, where you don't know if you're going to see these people again or if they died quickly. She becomes a pretty tough young girl. And actually one of her older brothers marries a girl he barely met, and in order to protect that girl from being taken by the soldiers in horrific ways of war. So she does end up escaping Cambodia with one of her brothers, and they end up coming to the United States. They're actually smuggled out of Cambodia, and you do read about that in here. She's got another book where she goes back to meet her sisters, and there's some family photos in here as well. It's not as well written as the other book, but it's, again, first-person account of all the things that are happening and all of the cruelty that you see people put their fellow countrymen in, not even really knowing everyone. It's just you have status or you don't, and you can take advantage of it or not. Bribery, the same thing with the mom is able to kind of hide some jewels away in order to bribe and save her family. And you see really the character, she starts off very much as like a 5-year-old, and she's like when she's writing it, it's like from the 5-year-old's perspective, but she's retelling this as an adult, and to me that was a choice, because you do see some older reflections, especially as she gets to become training to be part of the Khmer Rouge. It's to survive. And then she kind of discovers that she gets to become part of a dance troupe that it's there to like entertain the soldiers, and she's like, I'll take it, I'll do whatever I have to survive. And same thing with all of her other siblings. And then the disconnect that comes from that, because you are just in survival mode. So yes, you wonder about your siblings and if you'll ever see them again, but you're never going to ask them what they did to survive, because you don't want that question either. So very, very hard topics for both of these books. Again, I will probably not read a fiction and nonfiction about the same event further on in the series if I could get away with it, because these last two ones were really hard to emotionally go through. So they're both good books, just difficult subjects. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Next month we are traveling to Cameroon. If you're interested in what's coming up next for us or what we have read in the past, please visit us on Goodreads or Instagram. See you then.